Hello there, good morning, and welcome back to our study and reading of Maurice Nicoll's psychological commentaries. It's the 28th of December, and so before we begin, I hope you have enjoyed or bared up and got through all of your Christmas obligations, and if you are a Christmas lover, that you've enjoyed every minute and maybe even connected to the source, to Jesus, if you're a religious person. And as always, with these obligations and family commitments and getting together with people who maybe otherwise you might not need to spend time with throughout the year, there is much material for self-observation if you're in this work and you think that's an important part of life. And that is what this series of pages, this letter from Maurice Nicoll, is about. It's on self-observation. So without further ado, like I say, I got some time this morning, so I thought I'd jump on to share this with you. There's more stuff coming up, but it's good to be here with you. And if you're watching later, please do share your observations on self-observation or anything that you'd like me to clear up or clarify or speak further about. I'm always happy to do that. But for now, this is a letter from Birdlip, January the 9th, 1943, on self-observation. There are many things that can be said about self-observation and what it is and what it is not. The whole of the work starts from a man beginning to observe himself. Self-observation is a means of self-change. Serious and continuous self-observation, if done right, leads to definite inner changes in a man. Let us first of all consider self-observation in connection with the mistake often made about it. The mistake is the confusing of self-observation with knowing. To know and to observe are not the same thing. Speaking superficially, you may know you are sitting in a chair in your room, but can you say that you actually observe it? Speaking more deeply, you may know you are in a negative state, but that does not mean that you are observing it. A person in the work said to me that he disliked somebody intensely. I said, "Try to observe it." He replied, "Why should I observe it? I don't need to. I know it already." In such a case, the person is confusing knowing with observing. That is, he does not understand what self-observation is. Moreover, he has not grasped that self-observation, which is active, is a means of self-change, whereas merely knowing, which is passive, is not. Knowing is not an act of attention. Self-observation is an act of attention directed inwards to what is going on in you. The attention must be active, that is, directed. In the case of a person you dislike, you notice what thoughts crowd into your mind, the chorus of voices speaking in you, what they are saying, what unpleasant emotions surge up, and so on. You notice also that you are treating the person you dislike very badly inside. Nothing is too bad to think of him or feel about him, but to see all this requires directed attention, not passive attention. The attention comes from the observing side, whereas the thoughts and emotions belong to the observed side in yourself. This is dividing yourself into two. There is a saying, a man is first one, then two, and then one. The observing side or observing I stands interior to or above the observed side, but its power of independent consciousness varies, because it may be submerged at any moment. Then you are completely identified with the negative state. You do not observe the state, but you are the state. You can then say that you know you are negative, but that is not to observe it. If the observing I is supported by other eyes which value the work and recall it and wish to become more conscious, then it is not so easily submerged by the flood of negative things. It is then helped by and is a part of deputy steward. All this is quite different from merely knowing one is negative. Passive knowing can be said to be mechanical in contrast to self-observation, which is a conscious act and cannot become mechanical. Mechanical self-observation has nothing to do with work self-observation. People not only confuse knowing with the continuous act of self-observation, but they mistake thinking for observing. To think is quite different from observing oneself. A man may think about himself all day and never observe himself once. The observation of one's thoughts is not the same as thinking. It should be clear now that knowing and thinking are not the same as observation. So here he's he's discriminating between knowing, thinking, and observation, and how they are different things entirely. The question is often asked, what must I observe? First, the work explains carefully what you must begin to observe, but later a man must attain to fuller observation of himself for a whole day or a week and see himself as an outside person. He must think what he would think if he met himself. He would, of course, cordially dislike this man who is himself. A man must observe everything in himself and always as if it were not himself but it. This means that he must say, what is it doing, not what am I doing? He then sees now these thoughts going on in him, now these emotions, now these private plays and self-dramas, now these elaborate lies, now these speeches, excuses and inventions and so on, passing through him, one after the other. Next moment, of course, he goes to sleep again and takes part in them all. That is, he acts in the play he has composed and thinks it is real. He thinks he is the part he invented. Let us consider this viewpoint further. A man must be able to say, this is not me, to all his set pieces and his songs, to all the performances going on in him, to all the voices that he takes as his own. You know how sometimes, just before going to sleep at night, you hear loud voices in your head. These are eyes speaking. During the day they are speaking all the time, only you take them as I, as yourself. But just before sleep a separation takes place naturally, for connections are being broken between centers and between eyes in order that sleep may be possible. 2 or more eyes can keep you from sleeping. So you hear them, as it were, as voices talking, just for a moment because they are being separated by natural processes from you. And this is a very interesting time and place to observe yourself upon falling asleep and watching these eyes going back and forth. Inner separation means the power of not merely saying, this is not I, but ultimately of actually perceiving it for oneself, perceiving that it is true, that this is not I, not merely thinking it is so, or trying to persuade oneself it is, or saying this is what the work says. When you are in an unpleasant state, if you observe yourself over some considerable time, you'll notice that all sorts of different groups of unpleasant eyes try to deal with it in succession and make something out of it. This is because negative eyes live by being negative. Their life consists in negative thinking or negative feeling, that is, in providing you with unpleasant thoughts and feelings. It is their delight to do so, for it is their life. In the work, the enjoyment of negative states must be observed sincerely, especially the secret enjoyment of them. The reason is that if a man enjoys being negative in whatever forms, and they are legion, he can never separate from them. You cannot separate yourself from what you have a secret affection for. The case actually is that you identify with the negative eyes through secret affection, and so feel their enjoyment, for whatever you identify with, you become. A man in himself is constantly transforming himself into different eyes. He has nothing permanent, but by separation he can make something permanent. The line of separation is between what likes and what hates the work. Now we speak once more of observing talking. All rules are about talking, practically speaking, and how to deal with wrong talking. It is necessary to observe inner talking and from where it is coming. Wrong inner talking is the breeding ground not only of many future unpleasant states, but also of wrong outer talking. You know that there is in the work what is called the practice of inner silence. The practice and meaning of inner silence is like this. First, it must be about something quite distinct and definite, and second, it is like not touching it. That is, you cannot practice inner silence in any vague general way, save perhaps as an experiment for a time. But you can practice it rigidly in regard to some distinct and definite thing, something you know and see quite clearly. Someone once asked, "Is practicing inner silence the same as not letting something come into your mind?" The answer is no, it is not the same. What you are practicing inner silence about is already in the mind, and you must be aware of it, but you must not touch it with your inner speech, your inner tongue. Your outer literal tongue likes to touch sore places, as when a tooth hurts, so does your inner tongue. But if it does, the sore thing in your mind flows into your inner speech and unwraps itself as inner talking in every direction. You have noticed, of course, that inner talking always goes on in negative states, and that it coins many unpleasant phrases which suddenly find expression in outer talking, perhaps after long. In the work, we are told that it is necessary to be careful about wrong outer talking at first, and later on about wrong inner talking. Actually, wrong outer talking is mostly due to wrong inner talking. Wrong inner talking, particularly venomous and evil inner talking and so on, makes a mess within like excrement. They are all different forms of lying, and this is why they have such strength and persistence. Lies are always more powerful than truth because they can hurt. If you observe wrong inner talking, you will notice it is only half-truths or truths connected in the wrong order or with something added or left out. In other words, it is simply lying to oneself. If you say, "Is this quite true?" it may stop it, but it will find another set of lies. Eventually, you must dislike it. If you enjoy it, you will never lessen its power. It is not enough to dislike liking it. You must dislike it. All this belongs to the purification of the emotional life. Mechanically, we only like ourselves, and so we dislike or hate those who do not like us. A development of being is not possible, and quite obviously so, unless the emotions cease to have only this basis of self-liking. External considering in the work is putting oneself in the position of others. This is referred to in the Gospels. All things, whatsoever ye would that men should do unto you, even so do ye also unto them. From Matthew chapter 7. This is one of the definite formulations in the Gospels of what in the work is called external considering. But a man must think very deeply what it says and perceive internally what it means, because it has an outer and an inner meaning. If you say, "I always think of others," then observe it. It is probably a buffer. You do not notice, perhaps, that you say things or you write things which, if you received, you would not tolerate for a moment. This is one very interesting form of self-observation, and it includes observing inner talking. In yourself, everyone else is helpless. You can, as it were, drag a person into the cave of yourself and do what you like with her or him. You may be polite naturally, but in the work, which is all about purifying or organizing the inner life, it is not enough. It is how you behave internally and invisibly to one another that really counts. This is very difficult to understand. You may think you know this already, but to understand, even to begin to understand it, takes many years of work. When the inner corresponds with the outer, and when the outer obeys the inner, then a man possesses a second body. As we are, our outer life does not correspond with our inner life, and our outer life controls our inner. The inner grows by seeing the good of something. Recently here we were talking of what the saint Cassian says about a man being able to do the same thing for different reasons. A man may act from fear of law, fear of reputation, fear of opinion. Then he acts from outside, or he may act from ambition and many other similar forms of self-interest. Or he may act from good, from seeing the good of acting so. This develops the internal man. Now all this can be a subject of self-observation. But even the first stages of self-observation have a certain effect. They let in rays of light into the darkness of our psychic life. It is the psychic life we have to think of in the work. All the instructions of the work are about one psychic life, which is in chaos. In this way, self-observation becomes deeper, and the valuation of the work becomes more and more internal. So the work begins to act on essence, on what is the real part of a man. Work on oneself is always the same. It does not matter where you are always in contact with the work if your inner attitude to it is right. If your inner attitude is right, the work will teach you about what work on yourself means. If your inner attitude is wrong, it cannot, because you block the way. In all self-observation, if it is to become full self-observation, you must observe it. That is, you must see all your reactions to life and circumstances as it in you, and not as I. If you say I, then nothing can happen. The saying of I, the feeling of I, makes it impossible to change. If to every negative state you say I, then you cannot escape it. At first, a man takes himself as one and says I to all that happens in his psychic life. But in order to change, he must become two. He must divide himself into it and observing I, that is, into two. Then, later on, he may become one, a unity. The instrument of self-observation is like a knife that cuts away from what is not us. If you begin to see what it means to say, this is not I, then you begin to use this instrument. When you can really say, what is it doing, instead of what am I doing, you begin to understand the work. The work is to make a new set of reactions, or rather new ways of taking things. As long as you are nothing but ordinary life reactions, you cannot change. When you take ordinary things in a new way, you begin to change. You cannot remain the same and change. If you are always the same, it means that you always react to life in the same way. You insist on your pound of flesh. The idea of change is not to be the same. The idea of the work is to change oneself. The idea of self-observation is to separate from what one was by not going with what one observes. In this way, self-observation is a means of self-change. When you have begun to form in yourself the powerful mental instrument of this work, you will find that wherever you turn it, you will catch new meanings. The work forms in us a new instrument of reception, a new apparatus for receiving impressions both from outside and from inside. The work lies in parts that have to be joined together by means of understanding. Each part of the work, each separate idea, each bit of the teaching is exactly like the parts of, say, a radio machine. The parts of a radio are, let us say, lying on the table, and you can see them. If you know enough, if you understand what they are, you can put them together, and then the instrument begins to work, and you hear all sorts of invisible things that otherwise you could not hear. In the case of the work, each part is not something physical, an outer object lying on a table, but is psychical, an idea, a thought, a direction, a formulation, a diagram, and so on. If all these parts are fitted together by understanding and valuation, the work forms a new and organized apparatus in you. That is, you are newly organized. You have a new psychic organism in you. The work is actually a whole and complete organism which is given little by little, part by part, but all these parts are parts of a true whole. If the work is thus formed in you, you have a new thing, a new organized instrument in you. Even a single part of the work, if taken in with valuation and understanding, will begin to work a change in you because it will transmit new influences. But the whole of the work must be formed in a man. This can be thought of as another body, another organized thing in a man. If the man lives the work, then it will control the man he was. So, hopefully that gave you some more material for your own self-observation as you go throughout your life. I'm sure you'll have lots of material, lots of potential for self-observation, whether you're on your own in meditation or out in a bustling office or family dinner for Christmas, there's always something to observe in ourselves, and several things that I'll reiterate. Several things that I'll reiterate from the talk there. And hello to Tamoz. Hello and welcome. Nice to see you. Any comments or questions, get them in before we say farewell. But Maurice Nicoll begins by saying that self-observation is different from knowing and thinking. He says you can know and think something all day long and forever without actually observing it. The term that people use, or maybe it is the technical term, is to constate, to observe. So you have some attention going outwards into the world, but also inwards on yourself, and that is where the self-observation occurs. He also speaks about separating the observing I from it. And this can best be done if you sit down. Excuse me. It can be done very easily and simply. The clearest way, I would argue, to be able to see these two sides of oneself, observing I and it, is to sit down for meditation, find a short script online about thought observation. It's in the Hermetic tradition. Also, Vipassana meditation is sort of related to it. So sit down, and the instruction is ultimately just to observe the blackness of your eyelids and observe. And so that's observing I becoming active. And then it will throw up lots of different thoughts. And so there's this separation. There's the observing I that has eyes closed and is meditating. And then it is throwing up lots of thoughts. You can use the analogy of clouds going by or a train carriage. And what you'll find if you do this for long enough is that one of the things that it is thinking about is very interesting. And so observing I will move away and disappear, and it, the person, will just be thinking now. So there's no separation. There's no observing I and it. There's no separation. There's just it thinking. And then this will go on for a time. And then you'll be thinking about whatever it is that's interesting. And you'll go, oh, hold on. I'm meant to be meditating. So let me find that observing I once more. And now observing I is watching it, throw up lots of thoughts and a train of thoughts. And on and on and on. And if you do this for long enough, you'll certainly come to the conclusion, and you will know that there are these two parts of oneself. And that's the best way to do it. And this is why people often will say, oh, I'm no good at meditation. I'm no good at meditation, because they see it as painful to keep, for the observing I to keep disappearing and come back, disappearing, come back. But that is the essence of meditation in the beginning, this constant returning and reminding yourself, oh, I'm meant to be observing I, watching. And of course, if you've never had this realization ever, it can be quite stark and troubling, but you have to, push through that so that eventually you can sit with observing I even in your life when you're out and about. And so that's one other thing. Excuse me. And hello there, Ocracy-artist. Don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but Ocracy artist maybe we'll go for. You're very welcome. I really enjoy sharing the Gurdjieff Ouspensky fourth way ideas and work, and also now under the banner of the four ideals, which I'll be commenting on moving into the new year. And I'm glad you appreciate the content. The best way that you could support is to tell a friend, share this video, share the channel, share the show, so that other like-minded individuals can come in and join us on this journey. So I appreciate you also for being here. So welcome. The final thing that he says, which I think I'll just read again, relates to the work as an organism. And excuse me. before I say that, we have another question that I'll answer before we get into the last bit. I'll talk about the fourth way as an organism, which actually relates to the question. The question is, do you have any advice for someone who has been into the fourth way for a bit and seem to be hitting a wall with progress? So for me, my go-to is always to go back to the texts, and that's, for me, the source text would be In Search of the Miraculous or Ouspensky's The Fourth Way in regards to the technical side of things. So if you're of a technical mind and intellectual center, then I'd go back to those books, read In Search of the Miraculous again, find one of the practices that it offers or this self-observation and get into that. If you're more of an emotional person, then I would say to read Gurdjieff's Meetings with Remarkable Men, because that'll help you to connect with Mr. Gurdjieff, and the words that he wrote down for us. But also, you can find someone, who's further along on the work than yourself, and request some help, support, and advice from them. And if you find my email in the description, I'll be happy to facilitate that, because as I said, there's nothing I like more than sharing the material and commenting and speaking about it and helping people to find Gurdjieff's ideas, the fourth way. I also am very happy to help someone, in whatever aspect of the work it might be. And this is where I hope that answers your questions. And like I say, feel free to reach out via email if you'd like. But this comes directly into this aspect, because the work, as you're describing, is very vast, wide-ranging and complicated. And here, if we go back to the text, Maurice Nicoll says that it's like the parts of a radio. So each of the aspects of the work is a part of a radio. Why I'm just commenting, I'll come back. So each of the concepts and aspects of the work is a part of a radio. And so if you just have one part, if you've just got the part about octaves, then you won't be able to you won't be able to hear any music, let's say, or hear any of you won't be able to receive the radio transmission, the radio waves. If you've got the law of octaves and the law of three, and maybe the law of not expressing negative emotions, then you've got more of the radio, to keep with this analogy, but it's still not enough. You need all the aspects, and I'll just read that bit again, because this is why I'm always saying the texts, go back to the texts, increase your understanding, and have all these bits more strongly together. And so let's just read this once more, because I think it's very important. So we'll start at the top. Each part of the work, each separate idea, each bit of the teaching is exactly like the parts of, say, a radio machine. The parts of a radio are, let us say, lying on a table, and you can see them. If you know enough, if you understand what they are, you can put them together, and then the instrument begins to work, and you hear all sorts of invisible things that otherwise you could not hear. In the case of the work, each part is not something physical, an outer object lying on the table, but it is psychical, an idea, a thought, a direction, a formulation, a diagram, and so on. If all these parts are fitted together by understanding and valuation, the work forms a new and organized apparatus in you. That is, you are newly organized. You have a new psychic organism in you. The work is actually a whole and complete organism, which is given little by little, part by part, but all these parts are parts of a true whole. And this is maybe back to your question, your inquiry, that it can be quite intense learning all the new vocabulary, the new concepts, ideas, and trying to build your radio, to stick with the analogy. But you can, it is possible. And he's saying by understanding and developing all these psychical aspects of oneself. And again, he mentions very often valuation. So understanding and valuation are, in a sense, self-reinforcing mechanism. The more you understand, the more you value the work, and the more you value the work, the more you'll understand. And this goes on and on and on. And I've mentioned to a few people recently who have reached out that for me, the beginning of my YouTube journey was due to my valuation of the work. I wanted to share the value that the work ideas have brought to me. And so I started talking on YouTube, but I didn't talk about the work ideas. Excuse me. I didn't talk about the work ideas for many years. I was doing other things. But then over time, again, I'm talking on YouTube, I'm reading books, I'm talking about mindfulness and mental health. But then eventually the desire became so strong that I began talking about the fourth way. I started reading In Search of the Miraculous. And that was because I valued the work so highly that I couldn't not. It was more painful not to talk about the work ideas than to talk about them. And here I am, still talking about them, and I'm sure I will continue to. And under the Four Ideals banner, I'm bringing in religious synergism and syncretism and the value of all the world's religions, and more of that coming up in the new year. But for now, it was happy to connect with you all, anyone watching and listening live, anyone who would like some advice and support. You can certainly reach out via email. The link's in the description. And I'll be uploading some more perennial philosophy and fourth way over the remainder of the holidays before we get back into our reading schedule as normal. But for now, I'll say thanks everyone for joining. I hope you found some value in that essay on self-observation. Take care, look after yourselves, enjoy the rest of your holidays, and I'll see you again very soon, I do hope. Bye now.